לפנייך, שברחים גם יחד.
Right, because we have a minute and a half, does anyone want to share a turkey-related story? Anyone? Anyone have a turkey disaster? Good, okay. That's good. No pumpkin pie-related disasters. Okay. Because that's more fun than being like, everything was delicious. Everything was delicious. Boy. All right. All right, we're going to be all crazy. We're going to start 30 seconds early. For anyone who's watching, we apologize. So welcome, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. See, we never know Thanksgiving. What are people doing? Are they out partying? Are they their high school reunions? We are glad that you are not and that you are here with us so we can have a little Shabbat experience together. And we're going to start with a little singing on page 11 with Ki Eshmera Shabbat. Yeah, let's do that. It's good. All right. I think we'll be okay. Yeah. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Oti leomeyad beino veini. Oti leomeyad beino veini. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. So we are officially in that dark part of the year where we all feel that finally the winter is upon us. And so we need even more to be able to bring in Shabbat with a little bit of light. And so if you wish, sometimes we take a moment to just cover our eyes and bring in that Shabbat spirit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. And for a little bit of sweetness after a long week, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen. That is sweet. Okay, sorry. Shockingly sweet. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. So next week in our service, we get to read what you'll find on the bottom of page 25. On 25, the parsha that we read next week is all about Jacob. And while we won't get to him quite in this parsha, this is this beautiful story about Jacob leaving his home and having a dream where he sees angels greeting him. And the beautiful teaching here that reminds us, we're reminded that when we see Jacob, he sees angels going up and down a ladder. And knowing that they go not just down the ladder from the heavens, but up to, teaches that perhaps there are always angels among us. And so we have on the opposite side of the page the song that we sing on Friday nights that reminds us what it's like to have angels among us, angels who walk into our midst. And we sing welcome to those angels with the words of Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boechem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I'll invite you, if you will, to turn to page 28 and rise, and we'll join together in the call to worship with the words of the Baruch Hu. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
On page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim.
On the bottom of 33, wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. Please join me.
All these things your Torah gives us.
And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives.
What could be a truer token of your abiding love
than this holiest of your works in the living language that gives it form?
Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
And we join in the watchword of our faith with the words of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Please be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים.
אני אדוני אלוהיכם. On 39, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together, and singing the song that our ancestors sang at the shores of the sea, Mi Chamocha. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh, no ratzilot osei efelem, no ratzilot osei So I read something earlier that says that every rabbi gives the same sermon on the Shabbats of Thanksgiving. And I'm not going to give that sermon. I promise you I'm not going to. But I'm at least going to tell you what every other rabbi is saying. Because it all connects to this next prayer of Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu is this prayer where we ask God, we thank God really for spreading a sukkah of peace over us. And even though in every service, every evening service, we talk about this idea of a sukkah of peace, then we know that part of this connects to the idea of Sukkot, this holiday that we celebrate once a year, where we imagine what it would be like if we had to live just out in the middle of nowhere without anything to cover us except for just God's shelter. And the story, apparently, that all rabbis know, whether or not it's really true, is that when the early Americans, when the Pilgrims were trying to figure out what sort of celebration they could have in honor of how thankful they were to be able to be in this new great country and to feel like they had God's shelter of peace spread over them, they looked at Sukkot in the Bible and they said, this is it. This is what we should do, and this is why we should have our own special holiday of Thanksgiving. And they, in fact, base Thanksgiving on Sukkot. Now, whether or not that's really true, I don't know that anyone's ever really done the research to prove it, but it does sound super good. So tonight, in this Thanksgiving weekend, we'll celebrate our own little taste of Sukkot with Hashkivenu on page 42, asking God, not just this year, but all year round, to spread a sukkah of peace over us everywhere we go. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomrenu l'chaim, ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha,
ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך.
Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings.
Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai.
Guard us from harmful things.
Guard us from
all harmful things. O Adonai, keep us safe. Keep us safe throughout the night till we wake. Till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom. Ahamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. So I'll ask you now, if you will, to please turn to page 46, and we'll rise together as we join in the words of tefillah. Adonai
Sefatai tiftach ufi agita ilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imaot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei Bneihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Metim Atah Rav Lahoshia, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Ve'Ofer Cholim, U'Matzir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Milchamocha Ba'al Gevurot, U'Mito Melach, Melech Memit U'Mechaye, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atah L'chayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaKol. Days pass and the years vanish. We walk sightless amongst miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the dark in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed. And we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
Please be seated. And we'll turn now to page 60 and join together in a prayer for peace with the words of Shalom Rav.
Shalom
Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki ata Melech Adon Lechol Shalom. Ki ata Melech Adon lechol shalom, shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, tasim le'olam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol tov v'chosha b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, tasim le'olam. So we're going to flip now to page 253, all the way forward to this prayer that we do every service we come together, even though it is not part of our traditional Kabbalat Shabbat worship. It's the part that still means so much to so many of us. This is when we offer our healing prayers. And so if there's someone that you're thinking of tonight who could use some prayers and who would appreciate knowing that their names were shared in this place, I would invite you to do so at this time. So tonight, too, we're thinking of Eric Ash and Stanley Beresdorfer, of Carl Greenberg and Amy Lampert, of Nathan Levinson, of Drew Patchen, Marilyn Schlitter, David Smith, Lacey Weinstein, and Bruce Wynn. Thinking of all of those and the names that sometimes it's too hard to say, we join in Misha Berach and ask that healing comes their way. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBaracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBaracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Oseh
Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imeru. Amen.
So this past week in religious school, we were a little short-staffed. And so I offered to some of the classes that if they wanted to, they could do half hour, 40 minutes of question time with the rabbi. And like 100 of them decided that they wanted to do question time with the rabbi, which was great. And I told them that they could ask me anything that was Jewish or somehow Jewish adjacent, but it couldn't have to do with anything that was related to sports, science, or math, because those are the three subjects about which I know nothing. But they asked some great questions. Some of them asked some very deep theological questions. There were a lot of sort of what came first, not so much the chicken and the egg, but all other sorts of what could have come first questions. And then there were a lot of them that were about the calendar, which kind of felt like it was bordering on science, but I still was able to, I think, answer most of their questions, because really what they were worried about was they understood that soon Hanukkah is coming, and it's going to be the same date as Christmas. And I was trying to tell them that years ago, and most of these kids, I think, weren't even born yet, but do you all remember when we had Thanksgiving-aka, or whatever we called it, that it was like the worst, that Thanksgiving and Hanukkah fell on the exact same date. So I was trying to explain to them that really, it's not that big of a deal that the Jewish holidays change every year a little bit according to our calendar. But for rabbis, it actually can throw us off a lot more than just whether or not you have Hanukkah at the same time as Christmas or Thanksgiving. Because this time of year, between Thanksgiving and Hanukkah, has some of the very best Torah portions in the entire Torah, but some of them fit more beautifully with different holidays than others. So I will just tell you, which none of the children were interested, but at least it was interesting to me, that this Thanksgiving and this week's Torah portion are the best combination. And it almost never happens. This week's Torah portion is called Toldot, and it is such a good Thanksgiving portion. And not just because it begins with a scene all about gluttonous eating until you do something really silly, even though that is, in fact, how this Torah portion begins, with Esau being so hungry and wanting to eat whatever he can that he actually trades away his birthright for it. It's not just a great Thanksgiving portion, because it is a lot, actually, about things that we say our blessings for and are grateful for. For me, what really makes this Torah portion so good for this time of year is that it's all about this question of how do we carry on a tradition when the generation before seemed to do it so right, and we feel like somehow we can never do it quite as well as they could. This week's Torah portion is all about Isaac. And Isaac is the second generation of Jews. His parents, Abraham and Sarah, were the first, and so of course everything they did, every tradition they did, was right because they invented it. The generation after Isaac, Jacob, he becomes Israel. That becomes his name. So he is truly the founder of our people. So you can imagine the Jacob/Israel, that he too, everything he does that is Jewishly is somehow right, but Isaac in the middle, he never quite seems to know what to do. He never quite seems to know exactly how to be able to create and carry on these traditions. And really, we actually see Isaac in his story. He kind of just seems to sort of, I won't say screw it up again and again, but he never is really able to figure things out for himself. He can't quite find his own wife. He can't quite figure out how to move on after his parents are gone. He can't quite figure out how to do any of the stuff that we would call the Jewish stuff. He just doesn't know how to exactly do it right. And this is the way that I will say, at least, that I sometimes feel about Thanksgiving. You see, Thanksgiving is different than all of those other holidays that we celebrate during the year. If you think about all of the Jewish holidays, about Hanukkah and Rosh Hashanah and Passover, all of them have these traditions that are passed down truly from one generation to the next. They are in the Torah or they are in the Talmud. They tell you exactly what to do. They're actual mitzvot to follow, so you actually know if you are doing it right. And even though Thanksgiving isn't really a Jewish holiday, you think about those other American holidays when you're celebrating, the 4th of July, you know exactly what you're celebrating. You know how to do it right. You know that there needs to be red, white, and blue and things that explode in order to really make it a festival that is commemorating everything that the 4th of July does. But Thanksgiving, how do we know exactly why it is that we have to have a turkey? Why is it that we have to have that cranberry jello? Why is it that so many families feel like they have to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, or they have to go and play flag football, or what sports, remember, not my thing, but some sort of sport that people do on Thanksgiving? That there seems that there are all these traditions that families feel like they just have to do, but sometimes it feels like maybe the generation before, they really knew what they were doing. And for us, trying to do it on our own, it's hard to know, are we really doing it right? But this is where it comes back to this beautiful story about Isaac. In this portion, we see again and again sort of Isaac not quite being able to figure out his path, not quite knowing what to do. But there's this little section in the portion, and it's funny, I didn't tell Rabbi Michael what I was talking about tonight, but I guarantee you he already knows where I'm going, because there's 2 lines in this portion that I am obsessed with. I don't know what it is, but I love them so much, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the story. But in this part of the Torah portion, Isaac is making his way. He's trying to figure out things. And one of the things that he has to do is he has to figure out, because they're living, in the wilderness, he has to figure out how to get water. And he's going to need to have some wells. Now, in Jewish tradition, a well is never just a well. In the Torah, the idea of a well means so much more. It doesn't just mean sustenance. There are wells in the Torah that are actually magical, that follow the people wherever they go. Wells are actually the perfect place to fall in love. This is where Isaac finds Rebekah. This is where Jacob finds Rachel. This is where Moses finds Zipporah. The well is really like a great place for meeting girls. The well always means something that is so much deeper, and Isaac is tasked with this job of being able to find where their wells should be. Because Abraham, his father, he did this job. He had dug his own wells, but somehow Abraham's wells have been covered up. And so Isaac has to say, well, what is he going to do? How is he going to find this magical source of water that will mean so much? And what the text says, in just these 2 little sentences that I love, it says, Isaac went back to the place where Abraham had dug the wells before, and Isaac redug his father's wells, and he called them by the same name that his father did. But they were still his wells. Somehow Isaac realized that if he was ever going to become someone who could carry on his own traditions, who was ever going to have a life of his own, he had to find this line between going back and doing what his father had done so beautifully, redigging the wells in the same spot, calling them by the same names, but somehow making them his own. And it is only after this moment in the Torah that Isaac, who never seems to quite get it right, that God finally talks to Isaac. God didn't talk to Isaac when he was up on the mountain almost being sacrificed by his dad. God didn't talk to Isaac when he had to bury both of his parents. God didn't talk to Isaac when he got married. The only time where God talked to Isaac was after Isaac redigs his father's wells. As if God is finally ready to say to him, you're ready to do this yourself now. You are ready to take on the legacy of your parents and the tradition that they gave to you, keeping it both theirs and making it a little bit your own. So we're a day past Thanksgiving. But if you, like me, sometimes look at this holiday and wonder, how will you ever be able to do it just like the generations that came before you? I mean, we learn a little bit from Isaac. Not just on Thanksgiving, but in everything we do, that if we are able to take what it was that our parents and our grandparents created for us and somehow make it our own, then maybe that's the way that we'll really be able to create beautiful new traditions that generations from now will be ours and our children's and our grandchildren's as well. Shabbat Shalom and happy Thanksgiving. So I'm going to invite you, if you will, now to please rise, and we'll turn to page 282.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, l'tzeit gedula liotzer Bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'artzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'goraleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
On 287, may we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair.
Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You know, it is particularly hard at this time of year for those who have suffered a loss. And so we recall with love the names of those taken from us in recent days. And our hearts go out to their families in sympathy as we recall their names. Dr. Morton Green, Vicki Levinson, Simone Goldberg, Nancy Kalishman, Michael Reynolds, Weldon Sanderson, Noma Simon, Barbara Wolanski. We now recall the names of those, the anniversary of whose death occurs on this Shabbat, and whose names have been inscribed in the archives of our congregation or on the wall of honor for perpetual memorial. Clara Horwitz-Onfanger, Elizabeth Auer, Miriam Banker, Clara Siegfried Barrick, Ruth Ann Cohen, Alvin Cohen, Dr. Lester Drubin, Kate Dubinsky, Dr. Fred Fabric, Aaron Joseph Fadum, Maurice Frank, Julius Frensdorf, Harvey Friedman, Max Friedman, Myrtle Scharf Fuller, Albert Ginsberg, Dr. Alfred Goldman, Morris Goldman, Jeanette Herman, Julius Herman, Arthur Hirsch, Gerda Hirsch, Henrietta Bluestein Horwitz, Alexander Horwitz Sr., Anna Jossam, Fanny Youngman, David Kalishman, Sylvia Rose Katz, Rose Bothman Kling, Charles Codner, Valley Kohner, Harry Colburn, Bess Kronick, Zaylee Levin, Dr. Oscar Lipschultz, Louise Mages, Florence May, Arthur Michelson, Anna Miller, Sophie Newman, Dr. Matanya Niken, Ruth Portnoy, Dr. Adele Reby, Lillian Bloom Righteous, Annabelle Richards, Lee C. Richards, Richard Lee Richards, Ellen Kaufman Ross, Charles Rubin, Maurice Scallett, William Shield Sr., Claude Schlesinger, Carla Isselbacher Schlesinger, Susie Seltzer, Rose Shapiro, Rose B. Shapiro, Sidney Schoenberg Sr., Stephen Allen Simon, Jack Sonkin, Lorraine Clara Stern, Tilly Suffian, Selma Sussman Wax, Leatrice Sanders Weinberg, G. Scott Weinstein, Helen Weiss, Bernat Wildman, Peter Winston, and Wilbur Zweig. So with these names and the names we keep on our hearts, we turn to the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on 294.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'b'yom echon, u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala u'bizman kariv imru amen, Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei amaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha barichu,
Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, ta'amiran ba'ama v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And we say, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru. Amen. So a few brief announcements before we turn to our closing song. Coming up this week, we have Lilith readers on Thursday nights. That is our book club. Even if you haven't finished the book, you can still come, and we're going to have a little Rosh Chodesh celebration afterwards, so join us there. Next Friday night, we are having services as usual, but after services, we have our annual meeting. You don't have to stay for the annual meeting if you come to services, but it's really not that bad. So you're more than welcome to stay for the meeting if you like. And then last but not least, every year we collect presents for students at Monroe Elementary, and we could really use some more presents. They could really use some more presents. So if you are out shopping and you see something that looks like something that a child might enjoy, then please feel free to bring it here, and we will make sure that that these families are able to shop for their children so that they're able to give their kids and their grandkids something special this holiday season. So praying for a little bit of peace and a little bit of a better world this week. We're going to sing our closing song, Olam Chesed. Maybe a kick.
Yeah.
Yes. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Elalai, Elalai, Elalai.
Olam Chesed Yibaneh,
Elalai, Elalai, Elalai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Elalai, Elalai, Elalai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. I will build this world from love. You must build this world from love. And if we build this world from love, then God will build this world from love.